So I was just kind of sitting there on my bed, scrolling TikTok and Instagram, and I just kind of thought about this. I kind of had this epiphany that, in the same way I've talked about how forcing yourself to be optimistic and forcing yourself to be positive, in the same way I've talked about those things being unhealthy, always trying to see the good in other people is also just as unhealthy. And extremely dangerous, actually. Very dangerous. And unhealthy. And unrealistic. You actually do need to see the bad in people. You actually do need to look for the bad in people, just like you're looking for the good in people. And I'm not saying you need to look for the bad and not look for the good. I'm saying you need to look for the bad in people just in the same way as you're looking for good in the people. Because you know the real reason why people look for the good in other people is not because they want to see the good. It's because they want to ignore the bad. They just want to, people want to avoid the conflict because maybe in their past, in their childhood, anytime they pointed out something that their parents or their caretakers were doing wrong, they got punished for it. So they've kind of been conditioned to not pay attention to the bad things, or when they do see bad things in other people, they ignore it, or they just believe that they can't do anything about it because they'll be punished. Well, guess what? You're a big boy now. You're a big girl now. We're big. We can actually do things. You need to start unraveling this childhood trauma you have. It's not normal to be afraid of other adults when you're also an adult. Like, you have just as much, if not more power than these other adults. Like, we're all equally human at a certain point, Your brain at a certain point can't develop anymore, okay? When you're like 25 or something. So when you get to 25, you should not be afraid of anybody anymore. Because you know why? And this is something that really fucking pissed me off that I didn't realize sooner. There are a lot. There are a lot of adults out there who are extremely, and I'm not talking about like 20-year-old adults, I'm talking about like adults in their 40s, 50s, 60s. There are a lot of adults out there who are that old, and they're extremely jealous and envious of young people, and they're going to treat them like assholes because they're extremely jealous of their youth, their health. Maybe they're jealous that those kids still have life ahead of them because whenever those old people see these young people, it reminds them of all the bad decisions they made when they were young. And, maybe they are reminded of how shitty life was for them back then, and now they see how easy life is for some young people today. So, if you have like an older person, like if you have like a 40-year-old or 50-year-old at your job or in your life that's just kind of being an asshole to you, it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's actually probably because you're doing things right. And you got to remember, like, there's no good people. There's no good people in the world. That's not a thing. Just like there's no bad people. It's not that simple. Okay? You need to actually look for yourself and see. Look at the person, think about the person, and really see them as they are. Don't see them for just the good things, for the good side. See their bad side too. Because it explains so much when I think back to like how my grandma and grandpa, how they would just kind of be like an asshole to me, or they would just be standoffish and kind of scornful and like almost disgusted a little bit, even though I'm a perfectly healthy, smart, intelligent, good-looking young man. Like, what is there to dislike about me? Honestly, what is there to dislike about me? I'm not like a criminal. I follow the law. I treat people with basic respect. Like, there's nothing to just outright dislike about me, especially if you're my direct family. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, and the truth is it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because they're not thinking rationally. They're thinking with their emotions. which they're perfectly allowed to do. It's just counterintuitive to do that to a kid, you know, especially when that kid can actually be the one taking care of you one day. Like, why would you be bullying your future caretaker, you know, or why would you be neglecting your future caretaker? And I realize it's probably because they look at me and they're just filled with envy and jealousy because I'm living a life that they never got to live. I have a degree of freedom that they never had. And so they look at me with just this bottomless envy and jealousy. And maybe they don't even want to acknowledge that jealousy, but it's there. And it's seeping through all their actions and all their words, or their lack of actions and their lack of words. And so the longer they can keep me from realizing how much freedom I actually have and how capable I actually have, you know, the more they can feel better about themselves, because the more they can see that, you know, I'm actually not getting to have that much of a better life than they had. Because, you know, the worse off my life is, the less jealous, the less angry they're going to feel, and they're going to be able to relax a little bit more. So it really is like, I don't know, what is it like? Like lobsters in a barrel or whatever? Like whenever one starts trying to crawl out of the barrel, the others pull them down. That's really what it's like. I promise you, there are millions, billions, maybe even the majority of old people are like that. Because they don't put much thought into their thoughts. They don't put much thought into their thought processes. And they look at, they project their anger onto younger people. And it's like, even though these young people weren't the reason you didn't have freedom when you were young, you're going to be mad at these young people anyways because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel justified, you know. It feels like you're doing something by being mad at them when you're actually, it's not accomplishing anything. But don't look up to your elders, ever. Never. Why would you look up to someone just because of their age? Why would you look up to... Yeah, that doesn't even make sense. You're going to look up to them just because they're old? Like, there's reasons to look up to people, but that's just not a good reason. Because it's not hard to get old. All you have to do is eat and drink water, and you can grow old. There's not... Especially in today's world, it's not that hard to grow old. Like, we're not... Like, every country is not being ravaged by war and disease anymore. You know, you can pretty much do the bare minimum and live to be 100 years old. Or at least 60, 70, 80 years old. So, I would not automatically assume that people older than you, even if they're your family members, I wouldn't assume that they actually have your best interest in mind, or that they're actually proud and glad to see you succeed, or that they even want you to succeed at all. That is very much a real thing. And that's how, you know, poverty gets perpetuated. Cycles of incarceration get perpetuated because it hurts to see someone do better than you, especially if that person shares 50% of your genetics. Because then what does that say about you? Like, if this person who shares 50% of your genetics, your son, if they can go on and be more successful than you ever were, and they're only like 23 years old and you're 60 years old, what does that say about you? Well, it pretty much says you're a failure. And so seeing that kid succeed, that kid actually succeeding, it basically confirms that reality for you. It confirms that fear that you actually were capable of doing things, you know, but maybe you just got screwed over. Maybe you were born in the wrong neighborhood to the wrong parents. You were born in the wrong time, you know, so, and that is unfair. Like, I agree, that's not fair that you had the abilities, the capabilities, but the opportunities just never came across for you. You didn't have anyone to support you. That sucks. That's not fair. And so, but the way that they think about it is like, okay, well, it's not fair that this person gets to succeed, but I never got to succeed. So they're going to do what they can to tear you down. And if they don't try to tear you down, at the very least, they're going to avoid supporting you. And that was the vibes, those are the vibes I got from my parents. It was really weird. Like, they were just very standoffish from me. And same thing with my grandparents on both sides. It was like they just were so, they were like almost scared of me in a way, like scared of what I was capable of, because it would kind of make them realize what they had missed out on. Like the more things that I start doing right in my life, the more it shows them all the things that they did wrong, and all the things they did wrong. Because like my parents, for example, they were both complete losers in high school. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying it because it's 100% true. Like they got bullied, abused, stepped on by people in high school. So if they're the type of people that don't really heal their emotional wounds easily, or don't care to, or they prefer to just see themselves as the victim, how do you think it's going to make them feel if their son, goes into high school and lives a complete opposite life from them? Like actually doesn't get bullied, has lots of friends, sleeps around, is very successful socially. Like how is that going to make them feel? That's going to make them pissed at me. It's going to make them feel like I almost victimized them, because I'm going to remind them of the people that they looked up to, the people that they couldn't be, the people that looked down on them. So they're not looking at things realistically. They're looking at them from their chronic perspective of victimhood. And they've just grown to, they've got like my parents are in their 50s, and they've just accepted this victimhood as a part of their personality, and they don't really care to fight it because they've lost so many battles in their life. It's almost like it's easier to just see losing as a good thing, just to see yourself as, losing. Maybe losing isn't so bad. The meek shall inherit the earth, as the Bible says. It's good to be humble. It's good to be a good sport. Those are the things that losers tell themselves, so they just get comfortable being a loser. And they don't want their kids to try to break that mold. They don't want their kids to challenge their identity they've had for their entire 56 years of life. They don't want that. It's going to completely shatter their entire worldview, and it's going to force them to challenge a lot of their relationships. Because a lot of, like my parents' relationships, the reason they got bullied at school, the reason they were victims at school, was because they were victims in their house as a kid. So if they were to actually fight off that victim mindset, that victim identity, it's going to force them to reassess the relationship they have with their parents. And my parents are complete simps for their parents. They are complete simps. They will do anything for an ounce of attention or love or affection from their parents, my grandparents, because they got so little of that when they were kids. And so, like my grandparents are basically breadcrumbing my parents with attention. But my parents have still not broken out of that cycle, that cycle of being a victim. And yeah, they basically they refuse to challenge the relationship they have with their parents. They refuse to change it or just get rid of it completely. They refuse to see the reality that their parents actually don't like them. And that is a really hard thing to realize. But it's the truth. And I get, I understand wanting to feel good and wanting to think positive. And that works. That really does work in the short term. But it does not work in the long term. It doesn't. And you're going to have to keep lying to yourself over and over and over to get that short-term boost consistently. And then you're going to get to the end of your life and you're going to look back and see that it was all a lie. Your parents actually never liked you. Your parents never wanted you. Your parents completely failed with you. And that is the reality for both of my parents' parents. Like my mother, she was a bastard child. Like she was an accidental pregnancy. They didn't actually want my mother as a child. And so her childhood reflected that. She just got abused like crazy because, she was just kind of one of those babies that you have where it's like, well, at least we didn't abort her. At least we did a good thing to keep her alive. So, I guess it doesn't really matter what we do now. Which is a really big problem with the pro-life argument, because if all you care about is the child being born, but not the 100 years they're alive after that, not the 18 years of childhood they have after their birth, are you really pro-life at all? No. It's pro-birth, it's not pro-life. So that's what happened with my mother. She just got relentlessly abused. And the only time she ever got affection as a kid was when she allowed herself to be abused. It sounds crazy, but a lot of people are going to actually relate to this, unfortunately. And it's the same thing with my dad. The only time he got attention from anybody in his family was when he just let them do whatever they wanted to him. Whenever he just gave up. That was the only time he got attention. The only time he got attention was when he sacrificed all of his needs and wants and just let his parents do whatever they wanted with him. He just let the other guys at school do whatever they want with him because, maybe they're going to hurt him, but at least he's going to get some attention. Some attention to prove that he's actually alive. And I understand. I know that I can't relate to those exact circumstances my parents went through, but I can understand. Like, it's not complicated to understand why they are the way they are. It's not. It's very simple. But for them, of course, it's extremely hard to break out of those identities, especially when you've never been around anyone that's ever challenged that identity that you have. Like, my parents are both extremely religious. They're very Christian, and Christianity really strongly enforces this victim mindset. It does. So they're constantly surrounded by people who are losers, who also have victim mindsets, and they're constantly validating each other's victim mindsets. They're never challenging each other's mindsets ever, and they both have jobs where these victim mindsets don't really get challenged that much. Like, my dad was very successful as a pilot in the military because all he had to do was follow orders. Like, he never did anything in the realm of giving orders. He was just one of those guys that always follows orders. And you can get far. You can do well with that. And technically you can do well. You're going to be dying emotionally. You're not going to enjoy it. But you're going to have a job if you just always do what you're told. Yeah, you are going to have a job. And the same thing with my mom. And of course, they're still super intertwined with their families. And the only way they've ever been known in that family is as they are right now, is as the victim. Like, they've just carried that same identity that they had as a child to adulthood. Because that's the person that their family knew them as. So, to change who you are as a person would kind of change your entire relationship with your family. And you might even lose those relationships because they would change so much. Because when you change yourself, your relationships change a lot. So, for fear of losing those relationships or for fear of seeing those relationships change in a way that they didn't want, they've just never changed themselves because they're too afraid of losing the people that gave them the only validation they really ever had, the people that crafted their identity, basically. It's scary to rub up against that and actually challenge it. Especially if every single time you ever tried to be yourself, you were beaten ruthlessly, do you think you would want to be yourself? No. And if you were beaten ruthlessly for 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, do you think you're going to want to go back to being yourself? No. But the reason my parents are still in a relationship with their parents is because they refuse to see the bad in their family. Or they see the bad and they say, oh, well, nobody's perfect. No one's perfect. Yeah, but that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing that nobody is perfect. we should be striving for some degree of perfection in some sense. Like, we should be striving to be better as a society, you know? And the only way you do that is by, like, getting rid of the bad, by changing the bad, removing the bad. So you don't just look at the bad and say, oh, you know, everybody's bad. No, you look at the bad and you say, we need to get rid of this bad, because if we don't get rid of it, no one is ever going to get better. This relationship is not going to improve. You have to see the bad for the bad. Because by saying that, oh, you know, everybody has a little bit of bad in them, that's like trying to turn a negative into a positive, which is not at all acknowledging the actual negative thing. You're not actually acknowledging the negative thing if you're trying to turn it into a positive thing. Like, if I look at the sunny sky and I say, you know, it's a really sunny day, but tomorrow it's probably going to rain. You know, yeah, sure, it's a sunny day, but good things like this just don't last for me very long. You know, am I really actually seeing the positive thing for the positive thing it is? No, I'm not. I'm turning the positive thing into a negative thing. So I actually haven't done anything positive at all. And so it's the same thing when you try to turn a negative into a positive. You actually have not turned that negative thing into a positive. That's not a thing. That's not possible. Is it possible to just turn a negative number into a positive number? No, you can't just do that. You can't just replace the negative sign with a positive sign in an equation. You have to actually do something. You know what I mean? You can do negative number times a negative number, and that equals a positive number. Funny how that works. It's almost like you have to actually acknowledge the negativity for it to be resolved. You know what I mean? Like, you actually have to look at it and look at it for everything that it is. Not even for the goal. Because you got to look at the negative without the intention of ever trying to turn it into a positive. And the reason why you have to do that is because, like, you need to be okay with a negative outcome. If you're looking at a negative with the expectation that it's always going to turn into a positive, then you're not actually seeing the negative as it is. You know, because do you do that with positive things? Do you look at the positive thing and look at and think like, okay, look at this positive thing. I wonder how it's going to turn into a negative thing in the future. No, you think, okay, positive, this is a positive thing, this is a good thing, and I'm going to see how this is going to continue to be a good thing, you know? How can I get this to be a positive result in the future? Not just one positive result, but two positive results, and so on and so forth. So you would need to do the same thing with negativity, with negative things. Like, you need to look at this negative thing and say, yeah, this is a negative thing, and yeah, this actually could lead to more negative results. Sometimes things are just shit. And I'm going to try to explain what I'm saying, because I'm probably not doing a good job. But if you're like in an abusive relationship, and you know you're in an abusive relationship, but you always have a positive end in mind, like you always have a positive end in mind. It's like, oh yeah, this relationship is abusive, but at the end of the day, I want to be in a relationship, you know? Like, if your goal is just to be in a relationship, if your goal is always to end on a positive, that's not going to be good for the long term. Like, you should be okay with, okay, yeah, this relationship is abusive, and I actually don't like this relationship. So this relationship is a failure. This relationship is not good. This relationship has actually genuinely been a waste of my time. I need to leave this relationship. Like, you're not trying to turn the negative into a positive. You're almost trying to turn the negative into more of a negative, to really see it for what it is. And it's not for the purpose of turning the negative into a negative. It's for the purpose of actually being honest with yourself and actually enjoying your life. Like, you can't actually genuinely enjoy your life by lying to yourself constantly. You're not going to enjoy yourself. You're always going to feel like you need a little bit more, and then you're going to be okay. You just need a little bit more time, a little bit more effort. Then your relationship is going to be okay. No, it's not. That's not normal. You should already feel okay, regardless of how perfect your relationship is. That should not affect your inner peace. It shouldn't. You shouldn't feel like you're tortured by being alone. That's probably because you were abandoned as a kid. It's probably because you were abandoned as a kid all the time. Like, you shouldn't be sitting with yourself and just be terrified. Like, is there a tiger in the room? What's the deal? You shouldn't be scared to be alone. It doesn't make sense. But that's how a lot of people are. They are scared to be alone. But anyways, to relate this back to my family, my parents constantly, they have like this positive result in mind. Constantly. They always are thinking of the positive result. They're trying to turn everything into a positive, and it's unhealthy. Like, I can understand trying to turn something into a positive, but you don't need to take that to the extreme. You know, you should be like balanced. Like, you need to actually see things as they are. You need to not be seeking a positive result just because you're afraid of feeling negative. You don't need to be seeking a good result just because you're afraid of feeling bad. Like, do you actually want this positive result, or are you actually just afraid of getting a bad result, you know? Like, if you go to get diagnosed for cancer to see if you have colon cancer, and the test comes back negative, do you keep trying to take a test to see if it's going to turn positive? Do you just keep trying? Okay, no, maybe this next test will be positive. No, maybe this next test will be positive. Like, every time you do that and take another test, you know, right before you see the results, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel really good for a second because you're like, this is going to be a positive result. I'm going to feel good. But by being so desperate for a positive result, by taking this positive result seeking to an extreme, you're actually doing significant damage to yourself, because instead of like starting the treatment, instead of acknowledging how horrible this is and that your life might actually end, instead of acknowledging that sooner and actually getting treatment sooner, now you're delaying that, and you're actually going to be getting the treatment later. You're not going to get chemotherapy, and that cancer is just going to keep progressing and progressing, and you might die when you could have actually just been saved and been cured within the span of 6 months, you know? So it's really dangerous to be desperate for positive outcomes all the time, because not all outcomes are going to be positive. It's not always possible. So when you're constantly trying to ignore or avoid a negative outcome every single time, like, that adds up over time. And instead of just acknowledging the negative outcome and, you know, working your way through it, all those negatives are just stacking up against you. They're not being acknowledged. And it builds up and builds up, and you just get further and further in life, and you just hate life more and more, and you're just more and more miserable, and you don't know why. And it's because you're so desperate to turn everything into a positive. Not everything is a positive. You need to see some things as shitty when they're actually shitty, and accept and acknowledge the pain that is actually necessary sometimes. Sometimes you need to actually allow yourself to hurt. You need to allow yourself to feel emotional pain, because just ignoring the emotional pain doesn't actually fix it. You know, you shouldn't. If you're one of those people that think that you avoid depression, or if you think that you cure depression or you cure anxiety by moving faster and staying busy, you're making your life worse. You're burying it deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. You're constantly running from it. Like, you need to let yourself hurt. Your body is trying to get your attention. Like, the purpose of pain, the purpose of feeling the weight of those bad feelings, those bad emotions, is to help you course correct. You know, just like having a check engine light on your dashboard in your car is a good thing. Like, yeah, it's a bad thing that your engine is broken, but it's good that the light is coming on to tell you, you know, because then you can actually fix the issue with your engine before it becomes even worse and your car gets totaled. And now what was going to be a $1,000 repair actually is a $10,000 repair, and maybe makes your car not even worth fixing anymore. So pain is not a bad thing at all. It's a very good thing. It's to keep you from making the same mistake over and over and over and over, and making your life even worse and creating even more pain for yourself. Because there's pain sucks, you know. Pain really does suck. But you know what's worse than pain? Avoiding pain and creating more pain for yourself. So sometimes you just gotta take the bad things in stride, and you gotta realize, like, this bad thing right now is actually better. It's better for me to acknowledge and deal with this bad thing now than to let it get 2 times worse and then deal with it later. Like, either way, at any part of this journey, it's going to be a bad thing that I'm dealing with. It's just a question of how bad the thing is going to get. So I just need to accept that it sucks, this is shit, and actually deal with it and reap the consequences before the consequences get worse. And so what does this mean for my parents? It means acknowledging that you have childhood trauma, acknowledging that your parents are actually not good parents, and they never were. They don't actually like you. They never have liked you. They don't even want you around. They don't even treat you like a real person. They just see you as like a NPC in their life, just someone to help them connect their TV and set up their internet at their house. Like, the only reason they realistically had you as a kid was because they felt pressure to have a kid. They didn't actually want a kid. They just had a kid because times were uncertain. They weren't sure if they were going to need an extra stream of income, maybe to support them. They didn't know if they were going to be able to support themselves when they got older. They didn't know that if they were going to have the money for that. So for them, kids were more so, having you as a child was actually more of an insurance policy than it was, a commitment to grow this person into someone that is happy. That's what my dad needs to realize. That's what he needs to realize, is that his parents don't like him. He was just an insurance policy, and that's all they see in him. They don't actually see him as a plant that they need to grow. They just see him as an insurance policy. Someone to take care of them. Really, that's it. Just like a social responsibility, a social duty. That's all he is to them. But he doesn't want to admit that because it's too painful. And so instead of just acknowledging this bad, really shitty, horrible thing, he just pushes it down and keeps going and refusing to acknowledge it. And it's just going to get worse. He's going to become even more of an alcoholic. Like, you just think this alcoholism is coming from nowhere? You think you're just an alcoholic for no reason? No. Alcoholism only stems from really one place, and that's childhood trauma, emotional pain. Obviously there's some cases like of maybe like physical injuries, but I think a lot of it for people in modern society today, in nations that are not struggling to survive, not being ravaged by war, it's emotional pain. That is the reason why people are still alcoholics. It's emotional pain and trauma from when you were a child. And I honestly have to... I would not be surprised if I turned into an alcoholic, honestly. And I'm not going to... It's hard to hear, honestly. It's hard for me to accept, but I'm not going to bully myself for the fact that I might become an alcoholic, because how is that going to make things better, if I become an alcoholic, I'm still going to do my best to take care of myself. And I'm going to do my best to get better and to heal. But I'm not going to hate myself even more just for, being an alcoholic. Because ultimately, I agree that my actions, me being an alcoholic is my fault. I can maybe agree with that. But the pain that I have is not my fault. It's not my fault that I was abused as a kid. It's not my fault that I was neglected as a kid. So in a really twisted way, unfortunately, it's almost like being an alcoholic is not completely my fault. And I would actually say that goes for people that are alcoholics. I would actually say that it's probably actually not your fault that you're an alcoholic. I would actually give you that. Because obviously you want to say that people are responsible for their own actions, but people actually are not responsible for their feelings. We don't create our own feelings. I don't just get to wake up and choose, okay, body, we're going to produce happy feeling all day. Saturday, we're going to choose sad feeling. We don't actually get to choose our feelings. Our feelings choose us. But our feelings are the things that motivate our actions. So then how much control do we really have over our actions if we don't have control over our feelings? That's the unfortunate reality, is we actually have a very limited amount of control over ourselves. So I don't completely blame alcoholics for being alcoholics. I think they actually do deserve sympathy. And hating on them even more, I get wanting to avoid them. But just going out of your way to hate on them, that's not fixing anything. It's not. It's not gonna fix anything. It's just reinforcing their self-hatred. But the real uncomfortable truth as a society that we have to acknowledge is that a lot of the people that are doing horrible things, not all of it is their fault. It's really not. Like, you can say, oh, well, they need to get help. What if there actually genuinely is no one to help them? What if every time they've asked for help ever, they've been punished, abused, assaulted, raped, anytime they ever tried to ask for help? Like, that is a real life scenario for people. So how can you completely say that all of their actions are their fault whenever they were just chronically abused and never taken care of? You know, it's kind of like saying that if a tree falls because it just never got watered, you know, that's the tree's fault that it fell. Is it really the tree's fault if it falls on a house, you know? But the reason that it fell was because it died, because it never got water, because of drought? Is that really the tree's fault? Like, oh, well, the tree should have just known to dig its roots deeper into the soil. Well, no, but it couldn't because it didn't have water, it didn't have the nutrients to grow. And it actually, unfortunately, is the exact same thing when it comes to emotional trauma and people doing bad things. It's not actually their fault. That is the brutal that's the brutal reality. But, you know, as a society, you can it's not realistic to go and track down who it was that neglected them or abused them. Like, how can you do that? There's not a realistic way to do that. It's not realistic to go and arrest someone's parents or someone's caretakers because their kid raped or assaulted somebody. Even though realistically it probably is the parent's fault that the kid turned out into someone that acts like that. You can't just go and arrest those parents because, you know, you need proof, technically. But I think probably people in a court, you know, you can see where most of the criminals are coming from. You can see the environments they're coming from. And they know that there was no chance that this kid was ever going to turn out to be anything other than a criminal. Like, you know that. Like, when you see a homeless person on the side of the street, like, you know that they didn't have loving parents. It's really genuinely not their fault. And so I think this actually is the message that we need to be giving to people that do bad things. They genuinely need to know that it's not their fault that they're like this. Because why would they choose to be like this? It doesn't make sense. No one would choose to be like that. It's not their fault. Like, if you could see just a phone book, if you could just have like a story of their life and just flip through and read all the bad things that happened to them versus all the good things that happened to them, it's going to be way more bad things that happened to them, especially when they were a kid. So why would you expect them to come out of that as a person that's doing more good things than bad things, when as a kid, when they were a young little sapling, they had way more bad things happen to them than good things? Like, if you were never shown love, if you were never given peace, how can you expect them to show love or to have peace? It doesn't make any sense. But again, you know, our civilization is just not advanced enough yet to where we could realistically hold parents accountable for their actions or their lack of actions in parenthood. But I think one day we'll have a workaround for that, and I hope we can focus more on rehabilitating people, criminals, because it's genuinely just better. Like, economically, it's just more efficient to help people than it is for them to just be in jail, then get out, then be back in jail, you know. I mean, it probably costs like $50,000 a year or more, you know, to pay for that person to be in jail, for them to have a cell, for them to have food, water, you know, to take care of them medically if anything comes up. Like, that shit is probably expensive. I don't know, maybe $30,000, maybe less, but like, you could send them to college for the same price, you know? You could give them a good education and all that for about the same price. Maybe a little bit more, but then you would end up saving money because they would actually be fixed, and then they wouldn't have to come back, so you wouldn't have to spend money on them anymore. And then instead of being a drain on society, they could actually be putting money into society. And I'm not saying you should just directly move them from the rehabilitation center to society. There should be it should be like a gradual process. But all that goes to say, in order to actually end up in that good result eventually, you actually have to acknowledge all the shit, all the bad shit, completely. Like no holds barred. Look at all the bad shit as it is, completely. And actually start allocating blame correctly. Don't do the whole oh, well, there's so many good people out there. Society is good. Y'all are good people. No, society genuinely is not good. There's so much money in the United States, and you're telling me we still have 900,000 homeless people? How? We still have 25% of the entire world's incarcerated population? How? No, you actually, Mr. Criminal, you actually need to take a step back and realize that this country actually is kind of shitty in a lot of ways. And you've actually been shit on. And a lot of this actually is not your fault. You actually don't need to take responsibility for all of this. And that's what I need my parents to do. They need to realize that they need to stop taking accountability. Sometimes there is actually such thing as taking too much accountability. You actually need to hold other people responsible for the things that they did to you. Of course, it's probably true that, my grandparents, they probably were abused in the same way by their parents, But at some point, someone has to step in and say, you need help. You're not okay. Okay? Dad, you're not okay. And I don't want to be around you anymore. I'm not going to go out of my way to hurt you, but you need to get help. And I can't be the one to help you, but you do need to get help. Okay? And I don't want to be around you anymore because you're causing me more and more pain, and you failed me as a father. He needs to know the truth. He needs to know the truth. The truth is going to hurt in the short term, but it only benefits you in the long term. Everybody knows that, but no one wants to admit it because it's uncomfortable in the short term. And sometimes the pain in the short term is just too much. It's too much for some people. But man, your anxiety really actually, if you have anxiety issues, propranolol, Klonopin, Lexapro, Buspar, those are not the answers, okay? You need to actually figure out genuinely, why do you have anxiety? Why are you scared all the time? That's what it is. Anxiety is being scared all the time. Why are you scared all the time when every single night after work you come home and you're alive? You're not in Syria. You're not in the Gaza Strip. Your existence isn't being threatened, so why are you anxious all the time? There's not a tiger in your bedroom. You're safe. You're genuinely safe. But it's because I really think it's because you're not allowing yourself to get angry enough. You're not defending yourself. You're not defending yourself because every time you try to defend yourself as a kid, you were punished for it. For me, anytime I tried to cover my ass while I was getting spanked, I would just get spanked more. I would get hit more. I'm not going to even use the word spanked because that's not accurate. It's abuse. It's child abuse. It's beating your kid. That's what it is. And I remember anytime I would try to cover my ass to defend myself, they would hit me more. So that taught me very quickly, if I defend myself, I'm going to get punished. So, that's scary because every creature needs to have defense systems. You need to have a defense system active just in case. That's naturally what your body wants, is to defend itself. But when your body's been made to think that it's a natural defense system that's just supposed to be on, if it's not allowed to do that, of course you're going to be anxious all the time. If you think that you're never allowed to fight for yourself and you always have to hunker down, you're always going to be on the lookout for a threat because you're going to think that you're not allowed to defend yourself. And you're going to think that you're never actually going to have a chance of winning any battle ever. You're never going to have a chance of, you genuinely think that you don't have any chance of winning an argument. And so your best bet is just to try to lose almost as quickly as possible so that they'll just give up and stop trying to kill you. And they'll just like, it's almost like you want to give up really quickly so that they don't really feel the need to fight you anymore. They kind of lose interest in killing you because you gave up so easily. So that's basically what it is. You're constantly on the lookout to see, okay, when do I need to give up and completely hunker down and cower in fear? Because that's what I've learned to do as a way to ensure my survival. You've got it ingrained into you that everyone knows better than you. Like, defending myself feels extremely natural, and it feels good to defend myself. But my parents aren't letting me do that. And my parents, according to them, they always know what's best. So I guess I'm just wrong. I guess I'm just never right. I guess there's something wrong with me. So I think chronic anxiety is also this, and depression, it's this constant belief, this deeply held belief that you're always the one doing something wrong. That there's always something wrong with you and everybody else is right. And so, yeah, why wouldn't you be scared? Why wouldn't you be scared all the time? Because you genuinely think that you're basically at everyone's mercy. In that case, if that's actually what you believe about the world, you're at the mercy of everyone else. Because everyone else knows better than you, right? So they can just do whatever they want with you. So why wouldn't you be scared? Because literally anything could happen to you. Your only interest is that, like, you're just going to pretty much let them do whatever they want with you, so that they don't kill you. That's what it feels like. That's what that level of anxiety feels like. It feels like I'm just going to hunker down and let this person do whatever they need to do to me so that I don't die. And the fear is so strong. The feelings of fear, the cortisol running through your veins is just so strong that it feels like you can't do anything but that. You just cower in fear and freeze, pretty much. Because that's what, like, a freeze response isn't really a freeze response. It's more so just giving up. That's what it is. Like, you're not actually genuinely just frozen. It's not like you think that... Like, it's not like you genuinely think that it's going to help. It's just genuinely you giving up. Like, it's not like you're playing dead. It's just you giving up. Well, I guess it kind of is like playing dead. But it's just such an ineffective defense mechanism. Like, you're just completely at the mercy of everyone else. So, like, even if the other person only has a pair of scissors, and that's the only method of attack they have to you, you still need to be scared of them because you believe that you can't fight back. So you still have to cower in fear because you believe that everyone is right, no matter what, and you're always wrong. So you have to always cower in fear, even if all they are equipped with is a box cutter or a pair of scissors. So you're basically scared of everybody because you're never going to fight that person with the scissors. And if you're not willing to fight someone that just has a pair of scissors as their only weapon, then that pair of scissors is just as deadly as a shotgun. So that's why you just kind of get stuck in this state that you just have to let them have the power that they want to have over you so that they won't feel the need to completely conquer you, so that they'll just kind of lose interest eventually. Because if you're someone that loves just conquering other people, it kind of gets boring whenever the person just gives up. Whenever they just start playing dead, it gets kind of boring, You're going to look for the next target. So that's really what chronic anxiety is. Like, if you're stuck in that freeze response, it's just chronically giving up and playing dead, basically. Because you have zero means of protecting yourself. So even if the person is only equipped with a piece of paper, they can just give you 1,000,000 paper cuts to death. And you're completely at their mercy. So you just have to basically plead and hope they have mercy on you. That's what this chronic anxiety is. It's just you begging for mercy. And it's funny because I think back to all the times my parents made me beg for mercy. They made me apologize relentlessly, even if I didn't do anything wrong. They made me feel guilty. They would just constantly be like, I'm going to give you mercy. I'm going to give you grace here, just like Jesus did for me, It's like this constant sense that, I'm literally at the mercy of them. I'm always doing something wrong, and the only way they're not going to punish me is if they just decide they don't really feel like it. They just decide they feel like they're going to give me mercy. And so you might be like, well, what is the fix to this? Well, the fix is to actually start defending yourself. You got to actually start defending yourself and being on the attack, being aggressive. In the same way that they're being aggressive against you, you need to be aggressive against them. Like, they don't have any right to be aggressive against you more than you have right to be aggressive against them. They're not better than you. This is some gold right here. I'm learning from myself. And so, how do you actually engage this? How do you actually become aggressive, and how do you start defending yourself? That's the real question. And the answer is to get angry. You actually have to start getting angry. You have to allow yourself to feel anger. But what's hard about getting angry, as I've talked about in the past, is, if you're like me as a kid, then every time you got angry, anytime you raised your voice at your parents, anytime you tried to defend yourself, they always shot you down and beat you, physically punished you, or they just ignored you to where you just believed that there was something wrong with you for being angry. So, like, they punished you so much for being angry that the second that a feeling of anger arises, the feeling of fear arises to try to suppress that anger, because it's your body trying to protect you. Your body is saying, okay, I'm going to try to scare you out of getting angry so that we don't get punished anymore. So just as soon as you get angry, you also get scared at the same time. And this happens to me all the time, and I'm just now realizing this. Like, as soon as I get angry, I get passionate about something at work, and I want to say something. I also, at the very same moment, I get extremely scared. And I know that it's because when I was a kid, every time I got angry, I would be punished and brutally abused because I was trying to defend myself. So of course I'm going to feel scared every time I try to defend myself. And so, well, maybe you're like, well, how do I get angry? I'm glad you asked. You have to start seeing the bad in people. That's how. And you might be like, oh, well, but, all those influencers on Instagram and TikTok, they're like, you need to see the good in people. Be kind. And I agree. You should see the good in people. But seeing the good in people is not an excuse to not see the bad in people. That's just being stupid. That's just being stupid. What you need to do is see people as they are. But when what people are really saying when they're constantly telling you to see the good in other people, be kind, they're actually just telling you, ignore the bad parts. Like, don't look at the bad parts. Look at the good. Look at the good in life. Don't listen to the news. Let's look at the good in life. And, like, I can understand doing that every now and then. But you also need to confront reality. You need to confront reality. Because otherwise reality is going to smack you in the fucking face. Like, you don't just need to be kind to people. That is not how life works, people. That is not how this works. I almost fell for a girl who that was her whole mantra, was just be kind. I can't stand that shit. Because there's more to it than that. It's not just be kind. You can't just be kind to everybody. Like, what does that even mean? If I want to be kind to someone, if someone actually deserves kindness, then I won't have to remind myself to be kind to them. I really won't. So it's like, when I see someone that's constantly, like, posting things about being kind, it's like, why are you having to remind yourself to be kind? Why can't you just be kind? Just kind of like how people, like how I talked about in the past videos, where it's like people who are constantly having to tell themselves to be positive. That's actually probably the last thing you need to do, because if your situation was actually positive, you wouldn't be having to remind yourself to be positive. You would just be experiencing the positivity. So if you're having to constantly tell yourself to be positive, your situation is actually probably extremely negative, and it actually probably needs to be addressed. You probably need to actually fully acknowledge the negativity of that situation. You need to acknowledge how shitty that situation is and get out. Okay? And then you won't have to remind yourself to be positive or to be happy, because you'll just be happy. Like, when you're genuinely happy in life, You don't have to wake up and remind yourself to be happy. You don't have to remind yourself to think positive. Like, if you have to wake up before your job, and tell yourself, today's going to be a great day, you have to tell yourself that, your day is going to be horrible. That's not how having a great day works. That's not how it works. You actually hate your job and you're just lying to yourself about it. Because if you actually loved your job, you wouldn't have to tell yourself to have a great day, because you would just already be having a great day. But yeah, you in order to get angry and actually start defending yourself and being aggressive, you have to see the bad in people. You have to. Because there is bad in everybody. There is. There are dangerous things in everybody that you need to be aware of. It's not the good parts of people that are going to destroy your relationship, is it? It's not the good parts of people that are going to harass you or catch you off guard in a bad way. It's not the good parts of people that are going to destroy your life. It's the bad parts. In fact, you need to be more aware of the bad parts of people than you are the good parts, because the bad parts are the things that have the capability to destroy your life, to destroy you, to kill you. I mean, don't forget the fact that other people can in fact just kill you. Okay, that is something worth knowing. Like, I get that we're a civilized society, but we're not immortal. Like, people still kill each other all the time. Bad things are still done to other people all the time. And everybody is equally capable of hurting another person. Like, I'm not asking people to see the good in me. I think people should look for the bad in me too and be aware of all the ways that I can hurt them, because I'm doing the same thing to everyone else. And it's not like me saying that in like a hyper vigilant way of like me being scared of people, because when you actually are allowing yourself to realize the bad sides to people, they become less scary because there's no more mystery, because I used to always think that my parents were good and perfect and they knew what was best for me. And so I was constantly scared around them because I couldn't understand why they would hit me if they're good. It would just completely catch me off guard because I didn't believe that they had any negative or bad qualities or traits or features. So I wouldn't know how to see any of the bad stuff coming, because anytime my mom frowned at me or got upset, I assumed I was always doing something wrong. So instead of monitoring their actions and their expressions, I was constantly monitoring mine. And so I was constantly scared because I thought it was something I was doing instead of something they were doing. So when I actually start to see the bad in other people, I realize, oh, it's not actually me that's doing this. It's them. They actually have a bad part inside of them. Just like everybody has some degree of bad parts in them. Some more than others, for sure. But everybody is capable of hurting you in some way. And so it would be stupid not to be aware of that. Unless you're just used to being hurt, or unless you just like being hurt. Which actually is true in a lot of cases. Like in mine, I was just used to being hurt, so I didn't really care to see the bad in people because I'm just so used to being hurt. I'm not really that worried about avoiding it anymore. I'm just going to take it on the chin, even when I could just dodge it. I'm just going to still take. I'm going to take the abuse because I'm used to it. But of course, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't do that. But when you actually start seeing the bad in people, like, you can actually be prepared. Like, you can see what's bad about them and you can be prepared, and you can get angry at those bad parts of them that they just allowed to exist. And you can actually fight for yourself, and you don't have to be scared anymore because it's not going to be unexpected anymore, because from day one you're going to immediately see the bad parts of them and it's not going to catch you off guard, because I promise you, if you just see people as they are, you're immediately going to see the bad parts of them. You are. Like, you are allowed to judge a book by its cover. Like, because nobody is completely perfect, you are going to be able to actually see their imperfections pretty quickly, because How could they hide it, you know? And it's okay to see all the ways that someone is going to bother you. So see the bad in people. It's going to make you feel a lot better about yourself. Not in a narcissistic way, but because you're going to just stop feeling bad about yourself. So actually, you're not really even feeling better about yourself. You're just starting to feel normal. Like it's not like you inflating your sense of self-worth. It's you actually just having a normal sense of self-worth. Like, if this is normalcy, or let me do it like this. If this is normalcy, you know, and this is your self-esteem down here, but this is just a normal self-esteem is right here, and this is your self-esteem, then doing something that actually naturally raises your self-esteem is going to feel weird. Like, doing what I'm talking about right now is going to raise your self-esteem. And so it's going to, like, in your mind, you're going to be thinking, oh, but I can't raise my self-esteem like that, because that would be like someone being here and doing this. That would be like someone who has a normal level of self-esteem that's falsely inflating their self-esteem to be a narcissist and be arrogant all the time. But no, that's actually not what's happening, because going from normal to arrogant narcissist is different than going from zero self-esteem loser to normal. Okay? I get that it's like the same movement. It looks like the same movement, but the result is different. Like, you're going from abnormal to normal. This person is going from normal to abnormal. You know, you're going from one extreme to normalcy, to healthiness, to being healthy. This person is going from being healthy to an extreme, to being unhealthy. Like, being up here is no better than being down here, okay? We all need to try to be stable, emotionally stable, because otherwise all these are going to catch up with you. You want to try to be in the middle. But, you know, what I would always think is like, okay, well, by having these beliefs that actually make me feel better about myself, I think I must be a narcissist. I'm inflating my self-esteem from a normal level to an unhealthy narcissist level. But no, that's not the case. Like, it's just because you're not used to being at what actually is normal. Your normal is down here, but that's not actually normal. That's just the normal that you're used to. What's normal is to actually be up here, to actually not look up to other people all the time, to actually see the bad in people, you know, to actually be on the defense, to be thinking about how you can overcome other people, you can get over other people, how you can beat other people. That's normal. Now, if you're up here and you're constantly thinking, how can I destroy other people? You know, people are only bad. People are only evil. Like, if that's how you're thinking, then that's just as unhealthy as thinking that people are only good, or that people are only powerful over you and that you have no power. That's just as unhealthy as being up here. You know, they're the same. But being in the middle is where you want to be. You want to feel better about yourself. Man, and I wish that I could be like using, obviously you can tell I'm a pretty smart guy, and it sucks, but it really sucks that I'm having to use my smarts on something as simple as this. Something as simple as just being okay, being emotionally stable. That's what I'm having to use my intellect on, because I'm genuinely just that broken. Like, I'm pretty much all there mentally, but emotionally, I'm not. I'm not there emotionally. I'm destroyed emotionally as a person. So I don't have the capacity or the energy or the emotional strength to really to do anything more complicated than this right now. And it makes me wonder, like, what could I have accomplished with my intellect had I not been abused and neglected as a child? I could have, oh my God, dude, I could have done so much. And I know people are going to say, oh, but you still can. I know. But, like, that's minimizing. What that's doing is I know you think you're doing a good thing by being positive, but you're not. You're minimizing my negative emotions. And that doesn't make your negative emotions go away. That's just you making them, that's just you overlooking them, you know? Like you ignoring your child whenever they have a complaint, that doesn't make that complaint go away. It just makes them feel worse. It makes them feel smaller. Like it makes them feel smaller as a person, even though their problems actually haven't gotten smaller. Ironically, their problems have actually gotten bigger because those problems aren't getting addressed. So that's how it feels when people just try to throw out negativity and replace it with positivity immediately. It's annoying. It's disingenuous. Like, you need to let me grieve the fact that my life actually would have been better if my parents just hadn't neglected or abused me. It would have been better. Like, it's normal. It's healthy to be angry about that. It's not normal to look at your past abuse and just not be worried about it at all. Like, it should bother you if you're normal. It should bother you. And if it doesn't bother you, you're probably on antidepressants or anxiety medication, or you're in denial, or you're repressing your emotions, or you're dissociating. None of those things are healthy or normal. Like, do you think someone with self-esteem would just not be bothered by the fact that people abused them? Do you think that someone that actually stands up for themselves and cares about themselves and wants to be everything they can be, do you think they would be unbothered by people abusing them and stepping on them constantly? No, it would bother them. And the fact that it bothers them would motivate them to make a change. Like, it's good to be bothered. You need to let yourself be bothered by other people. And the more you start to see the bad in other people, you start to see the bad in your life, the bad things that have happened to you, you start to see the bad in everything, not just in people, but just in everything. The more you start to feel justified for your feelings actually start to feel real. You don't feel like you're crazy anymore. And it's great. It's a great feeling. And all that anger starts to come out because you realize you actually have been wronged. There actually has been a lot of injustice that was done against you. You actually do want revenge. Like, it's normal to want revenge. So start seeing the bad. Because the more you see bad in other people, the more you'll realize they're not better than you. They're genuinely not that much better than you. Like, you're not worse than other people. And it feels really, really good to actually allow your defense mechanisms to be active, to allow yourself to defend yourself, because then you're no longer scared to do anything. Like, you're no longer scared. When you're no longer scared of confrontation, like when you allow yourself to get angry, when you're no longer scared of being angry, when you're no longer scared of seeing the bad in other people, you're not going to have social anxiety anymore. Because what would you be scared of? If something arises, you're going to stand up for yourself. The only reason you need to have social anxiety is if you're unable to fend for yourself, you're unable to defend yourself, and you need to run at the first sign of a small threat. But the more that your nervous system learns that you're actually willing and capable of defending yourself, the less of a reason your body is going to have to produce a fear response. You know? Like, if your body knows that you're going to fight for it, why does your body need to make you scared or need to make you run? You know what I mean? It's not going to have a reason to. Like, the only reason your body is creating these feelings is to try to protect you, you know? But if your body knows that you're going to protect yourself, you're going to allow that anger to exist and you're willing to fight for yourself, the body's not going to have a reason to create anxiety anymore. It's just not. It's not going to have to remind you to run because you're already there. You're already there willing to fight for yourself. You're willing to listen to your anger and stand up for what feels important to you. And I've only started to experience this in small doses as I've started to heal more, but it is a very good feeling. And one thing that One thing that your abusers don't want you to know is that feeling angry feels really good. That's why they're so addicted to it. That's why people in power stay in power. It's because they let their anger run wild. Because feeling angry is such a good feeling. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. It feels like you're turning into the Hulk. It literally feels like you're turning into the Hulk. It makes you feel like you're bigger than people even when you're not. And that is a really good feeling, to feel bigger than other people. Or just to feel bigger in general. And that's what self-esteem is, you know? People with low self-esteem, they'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like you're small. You feel smaller than you actually are. It feels like everybody is taller than you, even when they're not. And so the way to counteract that is to inflate yourself. I'm not saying inflate yourself to a narcissist, but inflate yourself to a normal level. Get to a normal level. Make yourself feel bigger. Realize that you actually are just as big as other people in an emotional sense, in terms of your humanity. Like, you're just as human as they are. You're just as capable, and you're just as allowed to fight as they're allowed to fight. Like, there's no reason anyone is allowed to argue with you more than you're allowed to argue with them. You know what I mean? But as you allow yourself to feel anger more and more and more, you're just going to feel bigger. You're going to feel stronger. And you're going to see other people as your equal. Because if you're being honest and you have anxiety, you don't see other people as your equal. You see them as better than you constantly. That's what people with imposter syndrome think. They see people as better than them all the time. They don't see other people as their equal. And I actually today I got like a brief glimpse of this, because I allowed myself to get pissed at some really small things. But that's where you start. You got to start getting pissed at small things. It's okay. And I just started seeing things as they were. You know, when your anxiety just goes away naturally because you're allowing yourself to be angry and have your defense systems activated, like, you can just see people as they are, and there's no reason to be afraid of them. You can just see their flaws and see that there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, you could beat them in a fight. You could beat them in an argument. You don't need to be afraid of them. They're just as human as they are. Like, you don't need to be afraid to go and talk to them. They're nothing special. You could beat them in a fight. You could beat them in an emotional fight. You could beat them in an argument. Like, you start to have this mindset and you realize there's no reason for me to hide any part of myself. There's no reason for me to not speak up. These people have no power over me. Like, I'm just as capable of empowering myself as they are capable of empowering themselves. So you got to really have this yearning for justice and for revenge. But of course, as I said in my Get Angry video, like, abusers do not want you to get angry ever. You know why? And it's because anger is the hardest emotion for an abuser to fight. Like, abusers can't abuse their victims if the victims get angry. Because then an angry victim is extremely hard to control. Like, a victim that's completely, fully invested in their survival, in their own self-interests, they're very hard to control. They're very hard to take advantage of. And all that self-sustenance, survival, self-interest, all that is motivated by anger and fighting against things that bother you, even if they only bother you a little bit. So, if I'm an abuser, the first thing I want to do is make you feel bad for feeling angry. I want you to stop being angry. I want you to learn to no longer be angry, because then you're really easy to take advantage of. And this has probably happened too if you've been abused. If you've been abused continuously in your life, or neglected continuously in your life, your anger was probably not allowed to flourish. It was probably not allowed to exist. It was probably smushed. And that should bother you. That should make you angry. Because what's interesting is that my parents would tell me that I shouldn't get angry, or not to get angry. And it wasn't for the sake of, having no anger in the house. It was so that their anger could flourish, without having to be bothered by my anger. That was the reason. It's not because they wanted, like a peaceful household. It's not because they wanted to have a household with no anger. They just wanted to have a household where they could have their anger run wild. They just wanted to have a household where they didn't have to acknowledge their kid's anger. They didn't have to acknowledge the things that were annoying their kid or disturbing their kid. They could have their anger and their self-righteousness and let it run wild. Because that's one thing that anger wants. Anger wants space. Anger wants everything. Anger is greed. So if I can get you to stop being angry, my anger is going to have more room. So it's really disturbing when I think back on this, because it's like, my mom didn't actually want me to stop being angry because she wasn't angry. She wanted me to not be angry because she was angry. She wanted me to stop being angry so that she could be more angry, not so that we could all be less angry. That's the disturbing reality, because a healthy, an emotionally healthy person is not going to try to squash your anger. An emotionally healthy person is going to encourage you to look into and fight against the things that are bothering you. Because if I'm someone that actually cares about you, why would I want you to continuously be bothered? Why would I want you to ignore the things that are bothering you? No, I want you to do what you can to fix those things and stand up for yourself. And maybe you're someone that already knows how to do this, and it's like intuitive to you. And you're thinking like, oh, well, just stand up for yourself. Okay, it's not that simple. It's really not. Like when someone has continuously been punished or neglected for standing up for themselves, do you think they're going to want to stand up for themselves? No, they've literally been trained to do the opposite. They've been conditioned to not stand up for themselves. They need to be supported whenever they stand up for themselves. You need to encourage them to stand up for themselves and then support them while they're standing up for themselves, not just leave them. You need to actually actively support them when they stand up for themselves. But this never happened for me, So I'm having to learn it the hard way. I'm having to teach myself, which is not, it's not fun. It's complicated. And it would be a lot easier if my parents had just supported me. But it's like, it is, there's not really words to put to it if you haven't experienced this, but like when you allow yourself to actually get angry, and when you actually allow yourself to get angry at other people and blame other people for things that they actually are to blame for, and when you stop actually taking the blame for everything, everyone gets a lot smaller. Everyone gets shorter. It's like, that's the only way I know how to describe it. Everyone just seems less tall. Like you're no longer really impressed by anybody anymore. And I don't really think you should be. You shouldn't be impressed by other people. Because they're just people. They're not gods. Gods aren't real. They're not fairies. They're not titans. They're nothing. They're regular people. There's nothing but regular people in the world. No one is special. You should not look up to anybody, ever. I really don't think you should. I don't see the point. Like, you can look up to... Like, you can admire skills, but you're not actually admiring the person. You're admiring the skill, Like, you don't actually admire LeBron James, the person. You just admire the basketball skills, really. You could change his name and everything. You could change the way he looks. You could replace him with a completely different person. But if they had all those same accolades that LeBron James has, you would still admire them just as much. So it's not actually the person you're admiring. It's just the things that they're producing that you're admiring. It's the production. It's the results that are admirable. So I don't even think you really actually look up to anybody. You look up to specific behaviors, and skills. But it's not actually the person you're looking up to. Because they're just a person. There's nothing to look up to. They're not actually doing anything, really. Like, they couldn't even explain to you how their own heart beats. They couldn't even explain to you how they even breathe. They just do it. They couldn't even explain to you how they know how many times to blink per minute. So you don't. There's no reason to look up to them as a person. There's just not. You can look up to behaviors, but I think I know this sounds like kind of like a pointless distinction to make, but it really is there's a huge difference between looking up to someone and looking up to their skills. because by looking up to their skills, you're not allowing them to have power over you. You're not allowing them to be bigger than you. Because looking up to someone, guess what? That means that they're bigger than you if you're looking up to them. Like literally, think about it literally. If you're looking up to someone, that means that they are bigger than you. Why are you making yourself feel small? That's what you're doing when you say you look up to someone. You're making yourself feel small. You don't need to do that. So just kind of play with these ideas and see, instead of looking up to people, can you just look up to the skill itself? Because you can have that skill. You know, you don't need to be them. You can just have that skill. Like, there's tons of other people with that same skill. It's not special to that same person. Like LeBron James, guess what? In the next 20 years, 30 years, there's going to be another LeBron James. There is. Not literally the same person, LeBron James, but there's going to be someone with those same skills, if not better. And if not in the next 20 years, eventually, just like people said there would never be another Michael Jordan. And then guess what? We got LeBron James. Okay? So, there was nothing special really about Michael Jordan the person. There's nothing really special about Michael Jordan's skills at all either. So there's nothing to look up to, really. You don't even need to look up to the skills. Because they're all like, all the skills you see people have, those skills are had by people. Like those skills are coming from like the person, you know? It's a people skill. It's a skill that is possessed by a person. You know, it's not that impressive. They're the same species as you, you know? You don't need to look up to them like it's a skill only gods could have. Because evidently that's not the truth. It's a skill that is being had by a person. So why is that skill so admirable, really? Like, sure, it's cool, but you don't need to look up to it. You don't need to because by looking up to the skill, looking up to the person, you're minimizing your own skills. You're minimizing yourself. You're making yourself smaller. You don't need to do that. That is not necessary. You can just say, like, that is a cool skill. You don't need to say, I look up to that skill. I aspire to have that skill. Why? It's not going to make you more of a person. It's not going to make you more of anything. In fact, by desiring the skill so much, by looking up to it and like praising it and adoring it, you're just making yourself smaller by doing that. By looking up to it, you have to make yourself smaller to look up to something. So you're just willingly making yourself smaller so that you can say that something else is bigger than you. Why? Why not just look at it horizontally at the same level as you? And the only reason you would look up to something is probably because you just have a habit of making yourself feel small, making yourself feel like you're not enough. Like, you don't need this skill. You don't need to be more like this person to be enough, to be more of you. You don't need that. There's nothing outside of you that can make you more you. Like, everything about you that is you is inside of you, obviously. Like, maybe what you want is more peace. Okay, well, peace is a feeling. It is. It's a chemical. And it's inside of your body. Obviously. Where do you think feelings come from? They come from inside of you. But maybe in order for you to feel peace, in order for you to relax, you know, your body has to actually know that you're going to protect it. Because think about it realistically. Like, why would my body give me relaxation? Why would my body give me, like, basically opioids if my body doesn't think that I'm actually going to protect it, you know? Then I'm just going to get eaten. I'm just going to get eaten because I'm going to be like it's going to be like I'm on Percocets and I'm just laying there. So it doesn't make sense for my body to give me relaxation without knowing that I'm actually going to defend it. That would be like taking away all the guns that the army has and just giving them opioids. Like, that would be stupid. Like, maybe you could actually give the government or give the army some opioids to relax them. As long as they still kept their guns, because then we know the country wouldn't be in danger, you know, as long as they have the guns. But if you have the opioids but not the guns, then you're in trouble. Because then you're going to be coked out, or perked out of your brain. And you're not going to be able to defend the fortress. You're not going to be able to defend the country. So think about your body the same way. Think about it like a fortress. Like, your body is built for survival. Your body is built to combat threats, because even if it doesn't feel like it, there are threats out there. There are, in fact, things challenging your survival, okay? So if you want to relax, if you want to stop feeling anxious, if you want your body to give you those feelings of relaxation, your body has to actually know that you're willing to protect this fortress before it's going to give you some opiates to relax yourself. So yeah, how do you do that? You see the bad in other people. You genuinely have to see the bad in other people. If you're incapable of bringing yourself up, if you're incapable of bringing yourself up to other people, sometimes that's not what you need to do. Sometimes you don't actually need to bring yourself up to other people. Sometimes what you need to do is you actually need to bring other people down. And I know that sounds bad, but when you're someone that's been a chronic people pleaser, when you've constantly elevated people above yourself, put other people's needs before your needs constantly, like 100% of the time, you don't need to elevate people anymore in your life. You actually need to bring them down. You need to bring other people down. And obviously, if you're someone that is constantly putting other people down, that's not what you need to do. You know, it's different strokes for different folks. You know, not everyone is in the same situation emotionally. There's different resolutions depending on the emotional situation you're in. So if you're someone that's constantly elevating people, really for no good reason, other than the fact that they're not you, you need to bring them down. You need to bring them down a notch. And how do you do that? You got to see the bad in them. You got to realize that there is bad in them. And you know that it's there. You probably notice it, but you just decide to look past it. Or you tell yourself that somehow that bad that exists within them is your fault. Or it's your fault for pointing out the bad thing. Or it's your fault for reacting negatively to that bad thing. When it's actually not your fault at all. It's their fault. It's their fault that they're acting like that. So if you're just incapable of bringing yourself up, try bringing other people down. This is the answer, I'm telling you. And it's not it's not with malicious intent, you know. It's because, like, maybe you look at other people up here, like you have people elevated super high in your life. And this is the normal level of how you look at other people. Okay. Well, what you probably need to do is actually bring down your expectations of other people, bring down your idolization of other people to a normal level. You know, it's not like we're here and we're bringing them down to here. We're up here and we're bringing them down to a normal level. We're not pushing them down to an unhealthy level. We're bringing them back to a healthy level from an unhealthy level of adoration. So what happens whenever you bring down your admiration of other people? You're going to become more healthy. You're going to become more relaxed. And coincidentally, your self-esteem is going to go from here to here as well. It's going to be normal. Everything's going to be in equilibrium again, because if you don't think that other people are like bigger than you and better than you all the time, you're not going to feel intimidated. You're not going to have a reason to feel anxious. You're not going to have a reason to have a low self-esteem. If you believe that if you don't believe that people are bigger than you and better than you, then you don't really have a reason to have a low self-esteem. So if getting angry doesn't really work, just try bringing other people down a little bit. Like, if you're having a hard time bringing your self-esteem up, try bringing other people down. Try bringing your admiration of them down. Just seeing them as they are. And then a little bit of anger is going to come in. And I think probably both things will happen at once. You're going to see people as they are. You're going to realize they're actually not as big as you've been making them out to be. So they're going to get smaller in your life. And all the while, you're going to get angry at the fact that they were ever so big in your life. And these things are going to push against each other, and then you're going to be in the middle. You're going to be normal again. At least that's my theory. So I guess I better go actually start working on this, huh?